from Nunavut, and we say Asuyutit for hello.
This is how you say hello in Mi'kmaq. Weh. Ganche. Ganche.
Southern Shoshone.
How you say hello in our language is Sagoli, or Sagoli Swagege for everyone.
How you say hello in Blackfoot is Ukki. We are from Cochiti Pueblo. Goetze Hopa.
Kolamalsi. Yep, that's how you say hello. Dante. Yeah, Dante.
This is how you say hello in Ojibwe, Ani. This is how we say hello in Tansi.
Saigon.
Scano. Buju.
Inu, and to say hello is Atili Hai.
And how do you spell it?
I have no sweet clue.
Dancing, drumming, and lighting the kulik. A swearing-in ceremony unlike any Manitoba has ever seen. Murray Sinclair, a respected Indigenous voice in awe.
It really is Manitoba's true act of reconciliation.
A new premier, Wab Kinew, the first First Nations premier of any Canadian province.
My fellow Manitobans, today is a new day in our province. Today, a new era begins. And today, we get to work for you, the people of Manitoba.
A swearing-in ceremony steeped in Indigenous imagery and fun.
The best way to bless a space is to do the Red River Jig, everybody.
On hand, Kinew's family, touched by what they heard and saw. Kinew's uncle Fred, a residential school survivor, placing a war bonnet on his nephew's head. Others made history too. Nahanni Fontaine and Bernadette Smith, the first First Nations women in a Manitoba cabinet. Kinew says his 15-person inner circle will represent many walks of life. Deputy Premier Yuzoma Asaguera is Black, queer, and non-binary. Altogether, 8 people of color in cabinet, 7 who are women or non-binary.
And I believe that this sends a message to every young person in Manitoba that no matter who you are, no matter where you come from, and no matter which barriers you have to overcome on your life's path, that the road to success is open for you.
Kinew himself will be Minister of Indigenous Reconciliation. His role sends a message to Indigenous leaders.
Our government will recognize you for what you are, the leaders of governments. Governments, just like the other orders of government in Manitoba, Canada, and across North America.
Kinew's Education Minister, Nello Altamar, says reconciliation must start young.
If I can paraphrase Chief Justice Sinclair, education got us in this mess. Education will get us out of this mess.
One of Manitoba's present-day issues, homelessness, which Smith is passionate about fixing in her new role. She's Minister of Housing, Addictions, and Homelessness.
I've had family that actually have been homeless themselves, and I've actually lived in social housing myself.
After the ceremony, Kinew acknowledged fixing healthcare, making life more affordable, and ending chronic homelessness will be hard, but says his team will rise to the occasion. Ian Fraze, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The Honorable Public Insurance Corporation. My fellow Manitobans, today is a new day in our province. Today, a new era begins. And today, we get to work for you, the people of Manitoba. We're committed to putting you, the people of Manitoba, first, and we will devote every single day of the next 4 years to serving you and the future generations who will someday walk these lands. I want to thank you for the trust that you have placed in us. You have given us a mandate to fix healthcare and to lower costs for your family. You also came together on Election Day to embrace a message of unity and to reject division. And I am so proud of the message that it sends to young people in Manitoba, that the people of this province have come together to declare that we are one people, one Manitoba, who are going to build one future together. Today, Manitoba now has a Jewish lieutenant governor, an Anishinaabe premier, a gender-balanced cabinet, and a government MLA team that represents many walks of life from so many regions of this great province. And I believe that this sends a message to every young person in Manitoba that no matter who you are, no matter where you come from, and no matter which barriers you have to overcome on your life's path, that the road to success is open for you. And now it will be a responsibility of our government to ensure, when that young person takes that first step, that we, along with the rest of the province, are there to ensure that they can pursue opportunity and reach their full potential.
I know that there's some questions I'd love to hear from you of your response to some of the things that he was saying about his dream.
At St. John's High School, students spent part of the afternoon talking about the provincial election with Principal Doug Taylor. The results left grade 12 student Joshua Dare feeling inspired.
We're the next generation, and that it will be our responsibility next to help watch the communities and see what happens next.
Wab Kinew will be the province's first First Nations premier. In Kinew's victory speech, he talked directly to Indigenous youth.
And so to young people out there who want to change your life for the better, you can do it. But here's the thing. You have to want it. You have to want it.
Kinew says he was given a second chance in his life, and others can do the same.
My life became immeasurably better when I stopped making excuses and I started looking for a reason.
That part of his message is resonating with students upgrading their education at the Neeganon Centre's Aboriginal Community Campus. 31-year-old Donna Daniels and 28-year-old Donovan Peranto say Kinew's speech helped reinforce the path they're on is the right one.
It's a struggle. Like at first I was working as a single dad. I didn't know if I wanted to finish school or anything, but I decided to come back to school, sober up, and here I am.
It gave me motivation, and I hope it resonates with a lot of other Indigenous people that come here and want to get that second chance.
15-year-old Kyrie Barkman says Kinew's speech empowered her to make a difference in First Nations communities, specifically making sure they all have clean drinking water.
It pretty much inspired me on to talk about the problems that we have to go through being Indigenous youth.
Dare says communities will rely on Kinew to help make a difference.
His duty to make sure that he's a good example for the next generation of Indigenous youth and First Nations.
Kinew vowed to be a government that helps people who take the first step to help themselves. Dare's paying attention to that promise. Josh Crabb, CBC News, Winnipeg.
I wanted to formally apologize to your families on behalf of the government of Manitoba for what you have gone through these past few months. No one who has their loved ones taken from them in the fashion that you have should ever be forced to become a political prop in an election campaign. And I am deeply sorry that you have been put through that. The government of Manitoba is not liable for what a political party does or what politicians do during an election campaign. But I, as the Premier of Manitoba, I share the same moral space as my predecessor, the former Premier of Manitoba. And because of that, I wanted to take this time to say sorry and to apologize for those things that never should have happened. I also want to say I am proud of the people of Manitoba for rejecting that message and for coming together
to say that we need to seek justice. And that is what our team, that is what our government is committing to doing. I also want to say I'm very sorry for losing your moms, for losing your sister, for losing your loved ones. We're not in a position where we can change anything that's happened today. None of us can change the past. But we're here today to tell you that we're going to try. We're going to try to bring your mom, your loved ones home. We're going to try to work with you and the leadership of the First Nations communities and other levels of government to do the right thing here. And we are going to try to find justice. And so there's a lot of interest in the case, so I wanted to say these things in front of the people of Manitoba so that they could hear us apologize to you. And I'm just hoping that we can have a good discussion, that we can reset the relationship, and that we can work together in a good way.
I just want to quickly say, sorry, Donna, that I myself, and I know the rest of my family appreciate that. I appreciate that you guys didn't take it to that next level and, you know, go ugly and attack our grief during your campaign. So we appreciate you guys for keeping it classy. And you know, we were called upon lots by media in regards to the way things were being addressed and how we were being attacked in regards to searching the landfills. And you know, I have to say that we weren't ourselves as well going to go to that level. So we refrained from making any comments during that time. So we're just thankful that we have a new government.
As well,
Yeah, I just hope that you guys can help us bring our girls home. I really need that. Really bad. It's been over a year now. I don't think I'm gonna make it anymore. It's my daughter, my granddaughter. Please help me bring her home.
We're going to try. And that work is starting now. So
Yeah.
we wanted to take the time to start over, if you will.
Yeah.
And since the election happened and we're in the positions that we are now, we invited you into the building and we just want to start over. Just reset the relationship.
That would be good.
Take this time here.
Yeah, that would be good. Really good.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Well, we would like to invite you into the office to raise the pipe together and then to start a discussion about some of the issues and concerns that you have, and we can tell you a bit about what we have in mind.
This event that we are participating in, and what we have participated in for the past several weeks, if not months, it really is Manitoba's true act of reconciliation. And I want you to think of it that way. I want you to think of the fact that we are now entering a new phase. And that phase ultimately is going to lead to a relationship between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people in which we are able to show true respect to all of those who are here and all of those who come here. Because for too long now, the situation of oppression that has occurred in this province has resulted in our people being belittled, and feeling denied of their rights. But that, I believe, is all going to change now. I also want to say that in my advice to members of Executive Council who are going to be recognized here today, as well as all elected leaders and all of those others in the community who are holding positions of leadership, I want you to know that leadership is an important part of what drives a community. And leadership is about how we treat each other and how we show the way for each other. And in order to be a good leader, you have to love the people. We saw that in Wobb's remarks on election night, and we will continue to see it, I'm positive, as we move forward. but you have to learn to love the people even when they do not love you, because a good leader will learn to accept that as part of the leadership role.
This is Ottawa, and unlike much of the land throughout this country, the First Nations here never signed a treaty giving it up for settlement. That makes it unceded. In fact, First Nations and Europeans have a long history of treaty making in what is now Canada, going back centuries. For the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, CBC Indigenous got an all-access tour of where the original treaties are stored at government vaults in Gatineau, Quebec. While officials there seek to balance access with preservation, some are asking other questions. Namely, what role should First Nations play in the preservation of their own priceless heritage? Here's a look inside the vaults. This is where the treaties rest.
And so this is the vault.
In the bowels of a government preservation center in a secure vault amid rows of priceless artwork and historic treasures, the sacred agreements between First Nations and the Crown lie locked away.
So this is where the treaties would be stored?
Yes, this is where the treaty is stored.
For Manice Young, treaty preservation is a hands-on affair. The Library and Archives Canada official carts this one from the cool, climate-controlled vault through the winding concrete of the department's Gatineau, Quebec facility up to a sunny lab on the upper floor.
So what we have here, it's the James Bay Treaty number 9. It's the amendments of the Treaty 9, or adhesions.
She traces the fine craftsmanship of this adhesion to Treaty 9 in Ontario, highlighting its ornate gold tooling, black goat leather binding, and sturdy parchment pages.
With our job in conservation, we're always finding the balance between access, which is what we're doing now, but also the long-term preservation. And Treaty 11...
That's the delicate dance now on display. While the public can see these documents on request, few get this close. And while sending them to visit their home First Nations is cumbersome, it does happen, says Young.
A lot of people get very emotional as well because these are their ancestors. It's a very big connection to the past.
That's the case for lawyer and former Couchiching First Nation chief Sarah Mainville. She got the chance to see the original Treaty 3 while on loan to the First Nations in that territory in Western Ontario and Manitoba.
It's meaningful to see the document.
And something communities shouldn't have to wait another century and a half to see again, she adds.
The Anishinaabe should have more regular visits with these documents. It shouldn't take 150th anniversary.
It's easy to feel the power in that presence. Early treaties looked like this. The Huron Tract Purchase of 1827. It opened up a swath of southern Ontario to European settlement, yet it looks like it was scrawled hastily across this single piece of now faded parchment. Compare that with these copies of Treaty 11 or the Williams Treaties, both signed roughly a century later. The careful crafting signals the evolution of treaty making in a new country, but it can't conceal the colonial intent.
They're really only showing a partial story, or we're not really seeing any of the Indigenous perspectives of that documented record.
The prevailing attitude at the time was that Indigenous people were going to disappear and assimilate into mainstream culture.
So what does reconciliation look like in here, the Canadian government's official memory? That's a key question for a department that hasn't escaped criticism amid calls for all sectors of society to contribute. It's more than a little ironic for Claudette Commanda to learn where the treaties live.
And they steal drawers.
Yeah. Her people, the Algonquin Nation, never signed a treaty, meaning the land that both Gatineau and Ottawa occupy was never surrendered by First Nations. Just one of many hard truths she says the country isn't ready to hear.
There are many deniers out there that feel that the treaties mean nothing, that the land was meant to be taken. So are they ready? Is Canada ready for the truth? No.
And while reconciliation may be messy, she says this solution is simple.
The government should be working with First Nations, with Treaty Nations, to ensure that the First Nations, they have the ownership, the control, and the management of the treaties that belong to them.
Is that what reconciliation would look like in this case?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
A conversation for another day, perhaps. But for now, it's back to the vault. There's no denying seeing the original treaties is a moving experience. I'm a member of the Chippewas of Kettle and Stony Point First Nation in southern Ontario, something the Archives officials were aware of before my visit. So that Huron Tract Treaty they showed me, well, that's the treaty my First Nations ancestors signed almost 200 years ago. Here's a candid look behind the scenes at my reaction.
I know you've already looked at treaties, but we brought to this one. I thought this would be special for you.
Yeah.
This is the Huron Tract Treaty, also known as the Huron Tract Purchase, and this is dated 1827, so Pre-Confederation Treaty. And this has
This is the original
Huron
Tract Purchase that was made in 1827.
Yes. So it's two large pages. This is the first page. And if you'd like, you can unveil the second page.
The second one. Let's take a look. Wow, and this is the second page of the purchase. And here you can see the signatures. They weren't even signatures at the time. They were clan.
Yeah, the Dodan
clan
signatures.
Markings. Yeah.
They're always really interesting to.
Absolutely. I have to say it's kind of powerful to see these original treaty documents, especially when you consider how much power they had and continue to have over people's everyday lives. And when you think about how controversial treaties remain. One side says they've upheld it and often accuses the other side of breaking it. And oftentimes it wasn't a fair deal, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
On that point in 2015, Canada's Truth and Reconciliation Commission said that while treaty negotiations seemed honorable, they were often marked by coercion and fraud. Canada was and remains slow to implement those promises, the Commission said. So for some, bringing those agreements home is just one small step toward making things right. I'm Brett Forster for CBC Indigenous in Ottawa.
Danse, Anin, Boujou, hello and welcome.
It's really fascinating that we can still use our language in this day and age.
Canada, go Tartoli!
I always think about my audience. They always on my mind.
Thank you to Inuit who have always been sharing their stories.
That's the story of our people, never giving up.
What you're about to watch is the culmination of nearly 2.5 years of work. Back in 2021, I was a part of this team within the CBC that was asked to explore stories about residential schools here in Canada. Part of my assignment was to look into this story about a girl who died at the Capel Industrial School. And her name, she was only remembered as just a number on the registry of children who died in residential schools. Her name really just got lost to time for a variety of different reasons, ultimately. And I think that when we first found out about Indian Girl 237, a lot of people were really stunned to learn her name was reflected as just a number. But I don't think that people really ask themselves, who is this girl? Or even who does she belong to? But I dug in and I did my best to bring justice to Letitia John's memory. The banner and the registry where her name is replaced with just a number, it's not updated yet, but I hope that this work can bring some real and tangible change for her living family members today. And I hope that it compels someone out there to take some time to look into the archives that the National Centre for Truth and Reconciliation and Library and Archives Canada has on hand about residential schools, because there's a lot of information there. And I know that there are more children who died at these institutions, and their stories and names, they need to be known too. It's 50 meters long. Printed on it are roughly 2,800 names. The National Student Memorial Register is a visual and tangible way for the world to grasp how many kids died at Canada's residential schools. But there are at least two numbers, not names, numbers. Maybe you remember reading about Indian Girl 237 in the news. The name, if we can even call it that, almost perfectly captures just how cold and cruel the residential school system was with children and their names. But what is the story behind the girl and how she was remembered as just a number? And who does she belong to?
The harms and atrocities committed against Indigenous people inside Canada's residential school system are well documented. Among those harms, a legacy of erasure by these so-called schools. Some children were given more anglicized names, while others were given nothing more than numbers. And that's caused a lot of problems for those seeking answers and looking to memorialize loved ones who never came home. In order to find Indian Girl 237's name, it meant months of research, cross-referencing community records and digging through federal archives, which included hundreds of documents like school summary reports, correspondences between school and government officials and families, and death certificates and death reports. With confidence, we know Indian Girl 237 is Letitia John. This document is how we know. It summarizes treaty payments made to a family in White Bear. Back in 1897 or 1898 in White Bear First Nation in modern-day Saskatchewan, a woman named Pahi gave birth to a girl named Letitia. She was given the last name John, her father's first name. And as part of the Indian Act custom of the day, Letitia would be given a number, her father's treaty number, 237. That's what Indian agents would use to track John and his family in different ways. This same document shows that when Letitia was 5 or 6 years old, she was taken from her family and registered at the Capel Industrial School in LeBret, Saskatchewan, almost 150 kilometers away, and assigned student number 0235. Whether or not Letitia was referred to as only a number while at the institution isn't clear from the documents we reviewed, but changing her name administratively was a common practice, and one that finds its roots in a sinister motive.
It creates this sort of profound destabilizing effect, which is exactly what federal Indian policy was trying to do: destabilize, undercut, and replace Indigenous cultures to support the process of colonization. And so naming became a powerful site of this struggle over policy and direction.
Letitia died in 1912 from tuberculosis. The disease was deemed a crisis in the schools in Canada, caused in part by poor construction and ventilation. It killed half of those who died in the institutions, and tuberculosis was particularly intense on the prairies when Letitia was alive. Despite that, in 1912, the year she died, the principal wrote the health of students was good, sanitary precautions were taken, contagious diseases were isolated, and ventilation was attended to. Taking away children's names was the first step in the institutional process of cultural eradication, Carleton says. But it disconnected families in numerous ways, including making it nearly impossible for some families to find out what exactly happened to their dead children. And it's impacting our understanding of the institutions today, too.
It makes it very difficult to go back into the records and find out, who's who, where did they attend, for how long. All of these complications in the records makes it very difficult to understand survivors' experience.
In 2015, after the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's final report on residential schools came out, the National Centre for Truth and Reconciliation was tasked with creating a registry of names of children who died at residential schools. That was a response to the Commission's call to action number 72, which called for a registry of children who died at the institutions. The National Centre created and released the National Residential School Student Death Register online and in physical form back in 2019, but with a caveat. It acknowledged the list was far from complete, and an extensive amount of work still needs to be done to truly identify all the children who died at residential schools. Today, that message is the same.
As our knowledge increases, as the investigations continue, when we get a better understanding of who was lost and the circumstances of that loss, we will continue to add to that.
So, how do we know that the girl named in the White Bear Treaty Annuity Doc is the same girl who died at Capel? Her treaty number 237 was found in an administrative correspondence between the industrial school and the federal Indian agent marking a student's death. The same letter only referred to Letitia as Indian Girl number 237 from White Bear's band, the White Bear First Nation in modern day. That's how the NCTR was able to identify her on its registry. In another letter found in the federal archives, we found part of the same series of administrative communications about a student's death, where the name Letitia John and treaty number 237 of White Bear's band both appear. In a different federal archive, we found Letitia's death certificate. That document shows student number 0235, Letitia, who was 13 or 14, died of tuberculosis on February 12, 1912 at the Capel Industrial School. And it mentions her treaty number was 237 at White Bear. The White Bear documents we have say 2 girls dead in 1912. That's Letitia and her sister. The National Center says additional correspondences we found are likely part of the archives it already has. But it currently has millions of documents on hand that it's working its way through, compiling a list of children who died in the institutions. I shared news of our findings with White Bear Cree Nation on the eve of the community's first ever National Day for Truth and Reconciliation gathering in 2021.
We come from a place that has much history, and to be able to move forward, we need to address some of that. So it's only fitting that we have this privilege, because of others' research to bring closure.
Identifying and naming those who died at residential schools is important for the chief at the time and at Lone Child. She says it makes it more real to know someone's name, instead of just knowing someone may or may not have died in the institutions. Lone Child would like to find Letitia's living family members, but so far, no living family has been located.
But I do believe in the families, and that they know their people and they know who they've left behind. Externally, the systems, the records, might say something different, but I believe in our people and our people's governance. So I don't truly believe anyone's been forgotten.
Finding people tied to a family from over 100 years ago is no easy feat. People who know or remember them die. People move away from home. And various government policies in place between the 1900s and 1950s affected how we identify and are identified even today. While we couldn't find Letitia's family or share our findings with them, we have given Indian Girl 237 a name. And like the NCTR says, the online registry and the banner with the names of children who died in residential schools are living documents that will be updated in the future as more names are found. Brian Enius, CBC Indigenous, Regina.
There's a new song that you've started playing, but it's not released yet, but you're going to give us a special sneak peek, and it's called Made of Sin. What can you tell us about this song?
Holy smokes. Yeah. For me, this one was born out of the 215 when I first heard about that. And it just kept building and building and building, and it rocked me to the core, and it brought back all that stuff. So it's just like one of those things where it's just like, oh, I gotta do something with what I'm feeling right now, and how do I get through this? And through the years, it's always been music and pick it up and kind of work my way around that. So this is the song that came out of that, and I was thinking about like what it is for like a kid to go through that stuff, and quite often kids, the children, they take on the blame on themselves when things are bad, are happening that are bad. And then when they get a little bit older, they kind of think, well, maybe it was both of us, a bit of both of us, And then an adult, they get into adulthood and they think about it, and they realize that it really had nothing to do with them at all. And the journey begins, I guess. Yeah.
Would you mind reminding Canadians what the 215 refers to?
There was some unmarked graves that were found in BC. And now throughout Canada, I think it started out as 215 unmarked graves that kids were found, these grave sites, these burial sites were unmarked. Sad day, sad time. in Canadian history. And I guess there's over 10,000 now, or 11,000 or something that have been found. So that's a lot of children that didn't make it home. And it frustrates me because I hear like this thing that people say, like, oh, well, maybe they died because of this, or maybe they died because of that. And the point is that, yeah, they died, and it's very, very sad, but they shouldn't have been there in the first place. So, yeah.
And what do you hope people who are about to hear this song will take from it?
Well, I feel like music is healing, and maybe this will be one of those songs for that. Yeah.
Okay, I'll let you get set up for that song. You're listening to Music That Carries Truth, a special program for the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation on CBC Radio and CBC Music. I'm Rosanna Deerchild. Our musical guest today is the award-winning husband and wife duo Burnstick. We are recording live in CBC Manitoba Studio 11. Here is Burnstick with Made of Sin.
As a child, I dreamt through each night. When would I find my home? It's been some time now, and still deep in my heart, I am aching. I need you now. Like a thief in the night, they come and take our love. Maybe I'm born with a curse, or maybe I'm less than a sideways glance. So I must be made of sin. Oh, I must be made of sin. And as a child, I dreamt through each night. Your arms too far to embrace. May the light from your eyes never fade away. I am aching, I need you now. Like a thief in the night, they come and take our love. Maybe we're born with a curse, or maybe we're less than a sideways glance. So we must be made of sin. Oh, we must be made of sin. Child, I dreamt through each night. These walls around me would break, and the hands that love me would find me somehow. I am aching, I need you now. Like a thief in the night, they come and take our love. Maybe they're born with a curse, or maybe they're less than a sideways glance. So they must be made of sin. Oh, they must be made of sin. Oh, they must be made of sin.
Different cultures, traditions, and languages, where food unites them all. Celebrating our communities and families through recipes. Time to Eat, stream free on CBC Gem and CBC News Explore.
Hi, I'm Janelle Henry. I'm a reporter with CBC Indigenous. I'm Ojibwe from Rosa River Anishinaabe First Nation, and I'm based in Winnipeg, Manitoba. The story you're about to watch is called Why Res Radio Has Our Hearts. And this story is close to my heart because I got my start in media at Res Radio back in high school. So what I hope you take away from this is just how much meaning these little stations can create for those that are creating them and for those that listen to them. So enjoy right here on CBC Explore. So where are you from?
Island Lake, Manitoba.
Island Lake, and where are you from?
I am from Fisher River, Manitoba.
And where are you from?
South Indian Lake, Manitoba.
Okay, so what was your first experience with Res Radio?
My first experience, just background noise pretty much, and my kukum would always listen to it. And I don't know, she would turn it on in the morning right away, and we would just hear it in the background all the time. And I don't know, just same music and the voice. And I don't know, it's just memories now when I hear it now, being grown up, and it just feels kind of nostalgic.
It's Tanager at 904-7252. Let's get back to some more music here on BON FM. Here's some Timberland with Justin Timberlake and Nelly Furtado here on BON FM 90.9.
It's only been just over a year since 90.9 BON FM hit the air in the Broken Head Ojibwe Nation. And right around that same time, Mike Maple started his dream job.
Res Radio is different just on the community aspect of, being Nietzsche native and passing that knowledge on.
On air, he's known as Uncle Mike, and he loves to play and listen to music all day long.
Hey everybody, welcome back to BON FM 90.9. That was Ariana Grande with No Tears Left to Cry. I hope you guys are having a good time.
He also does news announcements, makes commercials, and does live hits out in the community. He is the only person working at this radio station, and he takes every opportunity to get others on the air.
Tacos, if you guys want to call it, be specific about it. But we need our people in the media because not only it builds jobs, it builds truth, and we can get our stories and stuff out there.
There are just over 150 Indigenous radio stations in Canada. Some have been in operation for over 40 years, and some are just starting.
First time I heard it was when I went with my cousin to visit his grandparents in Peguis.
Oh, yeah.
And they were listening to the radio and doing bingo. I think a song that reminded me of back home would be Ernest Monius, If I Wanted You, Girl.
Can you sing it a little bit for us? Just kidding.
No.
Just kidding.
Girl.
There we go, yeah. So what's some songs you would always hear?
Oh, you always like Hank Williams and all the old tunes, right? Like,
Yeah.
Because that's what because they go by more of the older generation, right? Like what they want to listen to. Because a lot of the young kids, they want to listen to hip hop and all their stuff that you can't understand.
Even the bougie Nietzsches reminisce about Res Radio.
Like any AC/DC.
I was just going to say, any AC/DC is the question.
Yeah, like Thunderstruck for sure.
Another fan of AC/DC, musician Garrett T. Willie, points to some older but classic Res jams.
Indian Car, I think. I used to hear that quite a bit, and it wasn't played on very many other radio stations, so that comes to mind. A lot of John Fogerty, Bob Seger, Taking Care of Business, Randy Bachman, of course.
Res Radio is basically just a radio station on the res, like BON FM, but with very little oversight to operate. Mostly anything goes. That's because back in the late 70s and early 80s, the CRTC recognized the need for Res Radio and thought of ways to make it more accessible for remote First Nations. And so when you were out there, did you listen to their radio station?
Well, you had no choice. What else are you gonna listen to? Wi-Fi is crap. So.
Would people call in?
Oh yeah, all the time.
What kind of things did you hear on there?
A lot of crazy stuff.
Stations could be set up as long as they're not interfering with other commercial stations and weren't broadcasting too far away from the res. And because these stations are limited in human resources, they aren't required to do a lot of the paperwork, like keep music logs. That way, the res stations can just focus on their programs, supporting community efforts and language.
So we're going to do a Buffalo bingo, get that going for the radio station to start generating money into the radio and into the community. Once we get that going as well, we're going to start employing people weekends, evenings, nights, on locations and everything like that too. Everything in between.
But Maple envisions a future where these stations are more connected with each other to share news and information more widely. He says it would be good because so many of us have connections to more than one First Nation.
Be that brother-sister relationship where we should all be coming together instead of, trying to be separate individuals and in different radio rooms where we should, if we all come together, our news, our music, everything gets out there.
Yeah. It's waking up in the morning with my grandparents. It's all you would hear. Saturday mornings, cranking up the fiddle tunes or Johnny Cash, all the old singers.
Someone who knows a little something about operating res radio is Pat Richard. Richard is one of 4 DJs from Sandy Bay First Nation Res Radio 106.3 FM. He started volunteering 12 years ago, the same day the station opened up.
I'm William Patrick Richard. I'm a DJ of Sandy Bay, our community. If you want to listen to 106.3 FM, just tune into sandybayradio.net. That's all you gotta do. All the good music's there.
It was August 23rd, 2011 at noon when Sandy Bay Radio first hit the air. As soon as he heard it, he drove straight down to what he now calls his radio shack to be nosy and hasn't left since.
But I loved it. I still love it. That's why I'm still here. I don't think I'd like to quit this job. I love it.
Richard is on the air early in the morning, Monday to Friday, 6 a.m. to 1 p.m. Requests for George Jones, Don Williams, and Charlie Major come in all the time from Sandy Bay and beyond. So when you hear one of those songs, how does it make you feel?
It takes you back to my younger days. That's how I feel. I go, whoa! Now I'm 15 again. I had to start giving her.
And with the help of the internet, he has listeners from all around the world as far as Greenland and Afghanistan.
All these songs tell stories, and the people that request songs, you could feel the people out there that call in for requests, how they feel, how they go, and how they move along.
He also makes sure to play Indigenous artists like the Dodium Boys, Delaney Moniaz, and the Masu Boys. While he does have the occasional fiddler or singer-guitar player in, he'd like to see his radio shack expand a bit more so that he can have full bands live on air. As a musician himself, Richard would like to promote the local talent as much as he can. He also takes the time to include Ojibwe.
Yes, I do speak in my language. I'll do the weather in my language. I'll speak it out in my language, what the weather's like, and I speak the time. Like right now, 11:30 is the time, is what I said.
At the end of the day, these 2 DJs are living out a dream.
I've never worked since I started because I'm loving what I'm doing. And that's just a great place to be.
I love the music. The people love the music. The people are awesome. Beautiful people out here in Sandy Bay. I got lots of family out here.
Through the airwaves and beyond.
Sandy Bay.
All the way. That's what we always say.
When the idea of dancing with a cradle board came about, it was really to like honor my parents and to let them know that they did a good job. Oh my God, I'm gonna get. I looked at old photos of Cree women that I found online, and all of them had their babies on their back or really close to them. And so I just wanted to dance and create that reminder, the essence of that love, that warmth of the mother. Indigenous women, you know, they did so much work and they always had their children around them. Like some of them, they can hang off this part of you, like your forehead, or they hang off the shoulders. Some even wrapped the babies so that they were on their back, kind of like a backpack. Yeah. You know, it was just a way to make sure that the babies were safe and they were always just around community. That day, building up to it was really emotional for me as well, because both my parents, you know, Orange Shirt Day was just a week or so before. And it was a really triggering time for my parents and myself. And because of, you know, my parents still carrying a lot of that trauma, they didn't come. They didn't come, you know, they were still really hurting and suffering. So they didn't make the trip from Saskatchewan. And it was one of those things that I really wish like they could see that and they could feel that. I don't really know how to describe the feeling that was in the building, but it really was magic. And there was so much love. And the first time that I'd ever danced with the cradle boards, where my parents saw, both of them were in tears. And my dad said, "It feels like I got a hug from Mike Cookham." I was trying not to look at anyone, because if I seen someone crying, I was already gonna start crying. You know, it's really, really catapulted me into understanding myself in a deeper way. So I'm really, really thankful.